What is going on, everybody, and welcome back into Byerly Studios. Today, we're going to go ahead and begin working on a new project. Now, this is a project that I had posted as a poll on TikTok, and my viewers or followers got to choose what we did next. So the last big project that I did was a zombie 3D breakaway tumbler, and then I gave the option for a 3D gnome tumbler or a dragon hatching egg. And they chose a 3D gnome tumbler. So we're going to go ahead and jump into this project by creating his bulbous nose there, and then I'm going to work a cloak-like texture all the way up to the top of the tumbler, and then we'll continue that all the way down towards the base. So I plan to start posting a lot more polls here soon, just on the main big builds that I create, where there are like multiple videos, and it creates like a little small series for people to watch in different segments. So sculpting and painting is all separated. The topper and then the base, and then you can kind of watch them individually or as a series, and then I'll add them into their individual playlist, which just makes them easier to get to and to view, and you can kind of follow along. So I'm creating just some meat here. I'm going to go ahead and get the thing covered in the clay all the way down the front side of the tumbler, and then the back side, because I have it laid down flat, will be last. So I'm just blending that a little bit as I go, working my way down the tumbler. All right, so with that being all completed, I'm gonna go ahead and apply two small pieces of clay towards the very front of the tumbler. Now these are gonna simulate where his legs would possibly be imprinting against the cloak itself, right? So I'm just gonna kind of give the impression of where his legs may be as they lead down to his little feet. So I'm just going to just quickly blend this in. It doesn't have to be perfect. Like I said, I'll come in and add details and things later. So I'm just getting the meat of the clay in place where it needs to be and getting the general shape blocked in. All right, so with that completely kind of blocked in there, I'm going to go ahead and start to get the shape of the first arm and kind of get an idea how I want that to be laid. You can make them in all shapes and sizes. I want to make sure that the sleeve goes around to the right-hand side and then blends into the top of the cloak. So he's going to have a long sleeve cloak, and then the hand's just going to kind of be popping, like peeking out from behind the cloth there. So I actually make this a few different times until I get the overall shape I wanted. And then after putting the thumb in there, I decided, hey, maybe I don't want a thumb there, so I redid it again. Just kind of blocking it in, see how I want the shape to be. This is very similar to what I did with the Grim Reaper gnome, and it's okay to have some distinguishing things, to set them apart. But at the same time, most of the gnomes have the general same shapes. Later on, the details that you block in and add details as far as what they're holding and if they're wearing a cloak or not, or if they're wearing clothes. That's where you just get the varying types of gnomes. So you can just apply those details as you go. I'm using an X-Acto knife just to kind of carve away different segments of that bulked out clay until I get the general shape that I may want, and then I can blend that in and add striations later on as I further along in the process. Because if I roll the tumbler onto its side, it may imprint on these details if I were to put them in now. So details will come later. Now I'm going to go ahead and get an idea of how I want the beard to look. Now, I actually struggled with this. I don't want all the beards that I make to be too much alike. And what I was thinking originally is I was going to have a V formation come from his face and then work that down and then have the beard kind of splitting. Maybe have like a twisty tie or maybe like a rope around the middle of his beard there holding it together. And then maybe like a cross hanging from that rope, but then his beard would be splitting as if it was like a breeze, or maybe he's flying through the air, or hovering, and the wind is kind of parting his beard there. So I tinkered with this quite a few times, and you'll see me later on in the build. I do remove the bottom part of the beard 2 or 3 times until I get the desired look that I want. So I am making sure that I blend the edge of that beard into where the cloth or the face would be disappearing right there. So I'll probably just whiten that out, and it'll just be kind of just a blended skin tone that will match his hands and his toes and his feet and things like that. But I just want to make sure that I blend the beard in so that it just looks all uniform. It doesn't really uh, look out of place, like I just added it just to add it after the thought. I want it to be blended into the overall sculpture so that it looks like it's one piece while not taking away and from the overall like goofy or light, fun, airy kind of tone of what the gnome is. If I want to sculpt a really pristine angel, I can do that, but this is supposed to be a fun angel gnome, not really just an angel sculpture, right? It's supposed to be fun and light and airy. So I'm just going to kind of blend that beard in to kind of get it how I want it. And then as I continue to blend it in, it really just doesn't sit well with me, so you'll see me cut it apart in a minute. All right, so here's where you can see. I just didn't feel like the split apart look was looking the way I wanted it to, and I decided that I kind of maybe want to make like a horn, like an angel horn for him to hold in his other hand, and the beard may get in the way or be hidden away. So I decided to make the beard part to one side. And then that way the beard is just more uniform, and I can paint more of his cloak around the front. It won't break up the legs so much. So when I shade between the impressions of his legs on the cloak, you'll actually see that shading, and I think they do it overall has a better design that way. So I think that I'll probably part the beard in other designs, but I decided to keep the beard together and then swooping to the his left hand side for this. I'm gonna go ahead and add material around the base of the cloak because I want the cloak to look like it's fanning out away from him, so that it almost looks like wind is getting up under it, or it's flaring upward. So I'll slowly build out that material just to get the kind of general flaring. Again, just blocking in that clay. And I'll just jump right in and start adding some of the overall texture of the cloak by adding small striations or small segments of clay and then slowly blending those in different thicknesses just to make it look like it's a cloak that's kind of rippling up his body. And I'll just slowly do that periodically throughout the build. Just kind of texturing the bottom of the cloak there while adding some ridges there where the cloak would be wrinkled or raising up a little bit there. All right, so for most of the cloaks, I do remove the edges of the cloak there around the bottom. So I want it to look like that's kind of the depth around the bottom. So the bottom of the tumbler is going to be sitting on a base. So I'm going to leave that stainless steel, and then when I epoxy it, that stainless steel tumbler will sit in a groove on the base. But the cloak itself, I want it to come down and then look like it's as if it's going up underneath the cloak. So that will be kind of shaded in more of a darker tone. And then his feet are going to be impressioned in there as well. So I'm just going to add a few details, kind of get some shape built in, and then here in a few minutes I'll begin on his feet. Alright, so I'm using a ball dimpling tool. This is a larger size just to kind of get the impression and push up the cloak where his feet are going to be popping out. And instead of doing shoes like I did for the Grim Reaper gnome, I decided to do sandals and toes for this one. I thought it would add just a really fun, cute little element to it. I know that the toes in themselves will be a little bit fragile when they're attached, so I'll have to make sure that I get the epoxy between the toes while not letting the epoxy build up too much, but I'll get to that stage later. I just thought it would be a really cool feature to apply sandals to his feet. So here you can see I've removed the beard again. I just wasn't feeling it. I wanted to take it off, sit on it for a little while, and then just get a general feel of how I want it to be. So here I am kind of judging where I want his wings to be settled on his back. So the big surprise for this build is I wanted to make removable wings that I can attach to his back. To do this, I bought some tube metal from Home Depot. And as you can see here, I was test fitting the aluminum rod into the steel tube. And what I plan to do is I plan to have each wing have an aluminum armature. These range from 698 up to 928 at the time of this video. And I did buy those at two separate times due to the fact that they didn't have a lot of them in stock. So I had to buy the last ones they had of each. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a piece of armature wire here. Now, when the clay is baked, I know that it would be strong enough to hold the tubes on his back the way that I want them to. But just as a precaution, and I have a tendency to be a little bit extra, I want to take two pieces of armature wire and wrap them around his back so that I can kind of make the armature wire hug or hold the tubes in place along with the actual clay itself. And once that clay is baked around the armature wire, it's just going to add a level of strength so that when the wings, depending on how heavy they are applying backward or downward pressure, that those tubes don't move in any way, because those wings are going to be pretty tight to the back of the tumbler itself. I don't want any shifting. I don't want them to break because making repairs will be very difficult. All right, so while we're at it, we're going to go ahead and cut a small segment of armature wire for his arm, which we'll do in just a few moments. The arm is going to be out and away from the body because I may want him holding a horn anytime we're out and away from the body. I want to make sure that we have armature wire in that for strength. Now we're going to go ahead and push down on both sides of this armature wire, and it's going to indent or leave a void in the clay. So we're going to push all the way down, push, 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 until it makes contact with the stainless steel tumbler, and then we're just going to let it sit on both sides. We're going to do the second one right here. Same thing. It's going to cut through the beard, so me removing that beard isn't such a big deal. And we're going to push all the way down, less meat there than the top one there. And then we're going to go ahead and fill this in. It turned out absolutely great. So we're just going to go ahead and use the clay that's already there for the most part, just to go ahead and blend that in. While I'm at it, I'm going to go ahead and twist the wires around the back so they don't move or twist or rotate while I'm filling them in, because then that would leave extra voids and air pockets in the clay. So there it is. I've already filled in the bottom one for the most part, but the beard itself requires more meat, so we'll have to put some clay in right there. And voila, we got that meat filled in there, and that's the bottom part of the beard prepared. Now we're going to add some wrinkles to the cloak itself as we work down towards the feet. And then we're going to go ahead and make repairs to the top part. It's a lot more material there, and I'm also thinking about with the idea of putting a thumb on his hand. I may do that here in a little while. I did that with the Grim Reaper gnome, and I'm thinking about doing that with him too. It adds a little bit more character and just adds some dimension to that mitten hand. So I'm adding clay in. I'm just pushing that in as much as I can. I don't want a bunch of air pockets in that clay. And then once that pressure is built up, I will then smooth it out. So I want to make sure that I fit as much clay into that groove as possible, so that way there's just not a bunch of air in there. We're going to blend a little bit, kind of block it in a little bit the way that I want it to be. And then we're going to continue adding that clay all the way around and through the beard. And then what we'll do is we'll go ahead and blend that in to where it looks like it was never removed to begin with. All right, so with the majority of that blending done, It's as if we never even touched the beard and the wire's not even there. I'm going to begin the work on his right arm. Now this arm is going to be out and away from the body. Now, and I also made some mistakes here. I'll own up to mistakes when I make them, and it just generates more repairs in the future. I had problems with this arms, guys. Every time I turned this thing up vertical and I left it alone, that arm fell off over and over and over again. And anybody who works with clay knows once a crack is formed and you blend it back into what it was before, that crack on the interior of the clay still exists because you didn't blend it on the inside, right? Yeah, you can blend it on the outside of the crack to hide that superficial crack, but the inside is still technically broken, so that crack can reoccur over and over again. The hand that I built out here is all clay, so it's got a little bit of weight to it. And that armature wire in non-baked clay is just not enough to hold this thing up. So I had problems. It kept breaking and breaking and breaking. And I came back with armature wire, and I had to use armature wire as like staples inside the arm to hold it into place. And it still broke even then. Later on during the baking process, it broke off, and I ended up having to come back with bacon bond, and I used that to repair those cracks as they formed while it was on the baking rack. So while it was baking, it was super duper hot. The clay was still not cured. It's super porous, and it's baking. You can see the steam and the heat coming off of it. The cracks were forming. I hand put bacon bond into the cracks and then pushed the arm back up, which squeezed the bacon bond out of the cracks and spread it out. So later on down the road, after it comes out of the oven, and I'll probably cover that again later, you can see where the bacon bond clay is squishing out, and I do have repair work to do, not only probably with an X-Acto knife on the cured clay, but also with the paint work that I apply to it. So definitely should have, in hindsight, either built out a lighter version of the hand, maybe with an aluminum foil base and then clay over that, then use the armature wire to hold that hand into position so it's not so much weight there, or to use the horn that I plan to design for it while I'm doing this process. So bake the horn with the main build of the tumbler instead of doing it separate. And that's the way I had did the Grim Reaper Gnome Tumbler. The sickle or the scythe that he was holding was part of the initial clay build, so it all baked together instead of baking that accessory separate. So now I'm going to jump in here, and I'm just going to use a dimpling tool just to apply some little details to the cuffs of the wrists there. And I might come in with maybe like a thread or something similar, maybe like a clay thread, and make it look like there is a line of thread weaving between the cloth of the wrists there. And I may paint the cuffs of the cloak maybe a gold metallic that will blend with the rest of the tumbler as well. So I might come back with some thread and make it look like it's stitched. I don't know quite yet, but as I finish out the painting and the details like that, we'll see where it leads us. So I really like the transition here. I like how the beard and the cloth of the cloak is blended, and I think that overall looks pretty good and how I like it now. So we're going to go ahead and build out his toes and his feet. I wish I hadn't done this so early in the process. I almost squished it multiple times, just rolling the tumbler around as I worked towards the back of the tumbler, because I didn't bake it in stages. I baked it all in one, so I do come back and start working on the back of the tumbler here soon. So I rolled out just large pieces for the foot itself and then smaller little circles for his toes. And I tried to go from large to small. That way it just looks, atomically correct. Take a little meat off that toe there as I apply it. And I just keep going across. There's what they look like so far. And then I blended the top and the bottom of the toe. I did not blend between the toes, just on the top and the bottom, just to add a little bit of strength to those so they are less likely to pop off as I work and move the tumbler around. It also makes it look like it's actually part of an entire foot, and I think I like this. I think that them blended like that looks really good. By not blending between the toes, it does, it makes it look like there's space between them. So I scraped and textured the bottom of the foot because what I wanted to do is I wanted to create a sandal. So I went ahead and created just a small square out of clay that I had rolled out. And then I'm pressing that at the corners just to kind of give it just a like a maybe like a teak wood effect. And now I'm like the second one there. I'm also applying striations to the clay so that the foot and the wooden sandal press together. And then I'm going to slowly apply maybe a leather band across the foot so that it looks like it's a sandal. And I'll just blend the edge of that in. And then I'll also go between the big toe so that it has one between the toes as well. And then I'll just slowly blend the ends of those in. Just create a little bit of a gap there with a straight edge. And then blended that into the second one. See, I'm pulling those toes apart a little bit there so I can have room. Taking some of the meat away from that leather band with an X-Acto knife and then just blending that in so it's a thinner piece of clay. Then that's going across the top. And then I add some striations to it to make it look like a wood plank. Of course, that really won't come alive until I add some washes and some texture to the paint. But that's the toes and feet. I think the little sandals look pretty cool. So then I'm going to jump into finishing up the beard. This is where the beard is sculpted and comes alive, and it stays this way. I will not remove it again. It is going to be the way that I want it moving forward after I've created it and moved it 3 times. So I did leave that little tightness right there halfway down the beard. I am going to put a rope around that of some sort, maybe whether that be a chain or rope out of clay or something, a different material, and then just epoxy that into place. And I'm just adding small pieces of clay to build up that texture so that I can get the overall beard shape that I want. I want it to kind of flare out towards the bottom below the rope. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and carve a little bit of that meat away from the middle of the beard there just to create just a tightness. And I created a small bore hole there. So I think that I might use like just a real chain that I might get at a craft store to go around the edge of the beard and then just tie that loosely and then epoxy it in place with a nice clay silver cross or something that's kind of like dangling from his beard. I thought that'd be kind of a cool effect. Or maybe make it like a beaded, like a small bead cross or something. So I may come back with some ideas with that later. I added some striations to the overall cloak itself, and that helps to blend some of those raised edges. And I'm immediately going to jump into the back of the tumbler here. Now, I haven't baked anything, so everything's pretty raw clay. So if I do mess with it a whole lot, I can take away some of those details. I'm marking the center there. That way I can kind of get the center of the back. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but just close enough to where it doesn't feel completely off kilter when you look at it from the front, because the wings can maybe be positioned in different ways depending on how I want to do that when I get to that stage. The cool thing about the way I'm designing this also is that because I'm making the wings detachable, not only is it easier to ship, but I can also make different types of wings. So if this does sit on my craft shelf for a period of time, who's to say that I won't come back in, a month, 2 months, or even a year and create different shapes of wings in different colors or variations. That way I can have fun practicing with different wing techniques without necessarily having to rebuild the entire thing to do so. I'll be able to make them detachable, which is kind of cool. So right now I'm going to go ahead and apply those tubes that I had purchased. I will leave the sizes of this tube in the description below. If anybody wants to have something similar, this is a lot of work, forewarning. and I'm just going to go ahead and kind of impression those. You can see that they're actually stuck to the clay there. So the clay will bake and bond to the metal, so there's no worries there. And I'm just kind of pulling the armature wire around the edge of the metal there, and I'm going to twist that really super duper tight. And then I'm going to turn that inward and press in so that that sharp piece is pointed in towards the clay. Same thing for the bottom. And then that's what it looks like. It's a jetpack. It looks like a jetpack, but it's not. Yeah. So again, the arm fell off. So this is me in an attempt to repair that. I added a staple there that I made out of armature wire, thinking that, hey, look, maybe me adding another piece of armature wire that's holding it to the main body of the clay is going to help. No, it does not. And you'll see that fall off again later, probably. So we're going to build out the meat and the material around the tubes of metal. Now this is going to be very bulky, and that is okay. I want the cloak to look like it's going around maybe like the bone or the overall wing meat that is on the back of his cloak there. So his cloak is covering his back, but the wings and the feathers and things are going to be coming out of that cloak and then be expanding upward. So the wings are going to be kind of just a blended version of feathers, and it's going to look good when it's all done. I know it looks very, very raw and bulky right now, but I do come in here in a little bit. I kind of smooth things out, add some striations to it, and then the wings are going to kind of cover some of that meat on the back of the cup. So this is what it looks like so far. Yes, the arm fell off again. Yes, it did. Poor little gnome is just losing arms left and right. Here's what it looks like all built out. I did add some rippling texture around where the joints of the wing are going to make contact with the back. And I have to blend that one still. But you can see where I kind of flattened that so there is room to have the wing sit in place. And I will have to fix that arm again, as you can see. So there I got the arm on there, and even when it was baking, it still gave me a lot of trouble, guys. I'm not gonna lie, it kind of frustrated me. And if I hadn't been watching it when it happened to be baking, then that arm would have probably completely fallen off or baked into the wrong position, and I would have to make even more repairs. So let me go ahead and turn around, show you what this looks like. So this is the metal that is gonna slide into place. Now I haven't cut these yet, but I'm just verifying that they do slide into place. So that way that when I do get to that stage, then I'm not running into problems that I didn't know were there. I think that is a pretty cool effect. I plan to use this a lot in the future for a lot of different projects. I did decide that that was a little bit too much meat on the back of the neck there, or back of the head. So I did flatten that a few times with different variations of tools, just so that I have more room to create the wings, the exoskeleton of the wing before I put feathers or so forth on it. And this is what we look like after it is baked. You know, I'm putting my hands all over it. I did add striations with the wire tool to all of the cloak, and then there you can actually see where the bacon bond is squeezed out of those cracks. I do have a little bit of repair work to make there, and that is okay. I'm all right with it. Um, I, I don't mind making repairs. Making repairs is a way to improve. And maybe I can do something different next time. So I'm just going to use a brush tool to remove all of those raised edges from using the wire tool to add texture to the cloak. This is a long and arduous process. It does take quite a bit, and it does create a mess, as you can see. It's a dirty thing. I don't like breathing this, so I am sitting pretty far back from the project, but you can really see. So here we are jumping to the future. And here it is. It's pretty smooth now. That arm still has to be fixed in a lot of ways. That is okay. I will get that squared away. But here you can see it's really starting to get smoothed out. And the washes that I apply, whatever color they may be, when I get to that, are really going to settle into those nice grooves that I use for the wire tool. I also brush off the toes as well to make sure there's no raised edges on the toes, so that they look like smooth skin. But I will come back and fix the arm here shortly. And here's what it looks like, guys. So there's the rippled back right there. It looks pretty cool. It's got a lot of meat to it, but we'll fix that with the next stage, and maybe shading and things. But it looks pretty cool. Again, this is a 20-ounce skinny tumbler, so we'll look at the mess I made. Look at the mess! But it's so worth it to get such an amazing project done. Now, this is the first video in this series, so please like and subscribe here on YouTube. Follow me on TikTok, where I post most of the highlight clips. And thanks again, guys, for coming to my channel and checking out the content that I create. I really do appreciate your support. I will catch you on the next video.